Hey guys, I'm fixing to sell my Belsaw mill. It's an A14. It'll accept a 14 foot log because it's more than 28 foot from the end of the carriage run to the end of carriage run. If you're familiar with Belsaws, you know how inadequate their dogs and stuff were. I've got all the original dogs that actually came with the mill. They're sitting in a bucket up there. We'll show you those a little bit later. But I made these heavier duty ones myself. They're much more heavy, and they're much more capable of stabbing into your log, and they don't give and they don't bend. I'll show you the original ones up there in the bucket. They were just little 3/4 inch wide by 1/4 inch thick, and they would just bend whenever you'd be going through the log. The back pressure of the saw blade in the log would just bend those little dogs backwards. So I come up with this setup here. This little gear setup, not the best in the world, but it does adequately. You do have to be careful with it whenever you're using it though. Have to make sure it sets and stays in place. Okay, this thing actually has got a 72-inch carriage right here for your log. And if you notice, this here's a different color. That's because I managed to come up with a spare carriage and disassembled part of it and took what I needed to put a third knee in the middle so that I give more support to boards as I'm resawing boards. Minimizes that flop and all that stuff. Plus, it'll allow me to saw smaller branches or smaller pieces off of a butt cut or something like that into some shorter lumber for smaller projects by having this roughly 36 inch available up here. Other than that, you have to have a minimum of 72 or 76 inch in order to use the mill. Of course, this one is reverse of that one because of the workings of your set works here. But essentially, you raise it up and you drop it down, and it goes in and out just like this right here. As you get closer and closer, you know, to your blade. I think I made these a little bit too big because it still stands off from the log. You have to, from the blade, you have to leave a couple of inches on the head block in order to make sure that you don't come in contact with the blade. If I was to rework these, I would cut this off about 3/4 of an inch to where I could get that much more, another 1-inch piece of material off of the last piece on the head block. But here's your set works here. This, of course, pulls it forward. That'll bring your log in, and there's the reversing switch, and you push it in order to go backwards. Been sitting here for a pretty good while. I just WD-40'd everything to make it where it was free enough. These were all rusted and everything, so I had to shine those. But you can see how slick and easy they'll slide in and out. It's got a drum in the middle that the cable is wrapped around and is part takeoff driven. It'll operate at 540 RPMs on the with a part takeoff off the back end of any old farm tractor. I wouldn't recommend running it any higher because that's what it's designed for. They do have kind of a smallish shaft. If I remember right, it's an 1 3/8 shaft. And this actually came from the factory back in the 1940s or so with a 40-inch circle blade, and I've got a 48-inch inserted tooth blade on it right now. So the bigger the blade, the more difficulty you're going to have, or potential you'll have for danger with that 1 3/8 shaft for the main arbor. Now this right here is your guide. You can use that ultra-high molecular weight neoprene, and you can actually turn them on a lathe and you can make those rub blocks out of that, or you can use hickory or oak. I've taken these boards and they're loose so I could put the blade back on. I took the blade off and it's been stored in the shed for just a little while. You can see it's got inserted tooth blade, and it needs a good sharpening, and it needs swedging, and at the very worst it needs new bits and shanks to put it back in optimum condition. And because this blade did not come with the mill, it's not hammered in my estimation for 540 RPM. So you're going to see, when we get fired up a little bit, you're going to see some blade wobble, and it does a fine job in softwoods like walnuts, cherries, and maples, as long as they're not exceptionally large in diameter. But once you start sawing in a really, really wide or a thick one, or into oak, the temperature will heat up really, really quick, and it'll warp that blade, and you have to just quit. So it really needs a hammering. Or you can just replace the blade or get another 40-inch blade that actually goes with it. But at any rate, I'm going to zoom in on this right here and show you this here, what repair I did to it. This is aluminum fella right here, and you adjust that in and out by these two set screws. There's a half moon here with a little wafer, or another half moon on this part here, that you can tighten one way or the other way, and you can shift the angle that this hugs the blade by these two set screws here. If you look really, really closely right here, you'll see this cast aluminum is broken. That was broken when I got it, and if you see this piece of thick, heavy angle iron, I re-drilled and bolted an angle iron on there, and it made this to where the angle iron was having the huge set screws through it in order to make the adjustments. So that was a repair that was there that I'd actually repaired right along with the dogs and all that stuff on the head blocks. And like I said, this is a 48-inch insert, and it's actually missing one bit. I saw it a minute ago. Whenever I picked this blade up, I saw that it was missing the one. I've sharpened it a couple times myself, but it definitely needs sharpened again and swedged, like I said before. Now, if you look at the base of it, of course, this is built on a bar joist. And if you look at the base of it, you can see those short stubs down there. They look like it's like 1 inch or 7/8 inch threaded rod. There's 13 of those leveling legs that can go down on piers, or in my case, I dug down to solid rock and then shimmed up with a concrete block, and then of course 1/4 inch and 3/16 plate in order to get it perfectly level and squared and plumb. So like I said, there's 13 points of anchor, and you can see the riving knife there. Very little wear on the riving knife. This thing had been repainted, I'm sure, at some time. The full length of the bar joist is 30 foot and roughly 6 inches, and then it's got a 20-inch tongue that sticks out the front. If you were to want to transport it, you could probably bring your own substantial axle and a means to attach this bar joist to the axle by means of a strap or whatever, or several straps, or actually bolts or whatever, you know. You can actually pick this up, take the blade off of it, and set it on the axle, hook onto the tongue, and take off with it, as long as you have your blinkers and tail lights and stuff, you know, like you see those magnetic ones on the back end of some trailers or trucks or cars in tow. You can actually just pull this with that axle once you take the blade off. I wouldn't necessarily suggest making a tow for an exceptionally long distance, but you know, if you're going 40, 50 miles or something, you know, and even take your time on the back roads, if it's 100 miles, I'd even go that far. They're sitting between the concrete blocks. You can see the 20-inch tongue sticking out right here. Of course, that you have to make some wide radiuses if you're pulling with the pickup truck, unless you have a hitch on it that allows you to extend back behind that bumper to give you a tighter turning radius. But nonetheless, it still can be done like that. It's very substantial in this bar joist frame trailer. It's a standard 6-pline partake off 1 3/8 for standard farm tractors. Of course, it'll telescope in. I think it's a 1 inch by 1 1/8 rectangle shaft. But you can see right here it turns the main arbor. Of course, this is the belt will slip until you engage it with the one lever over there, and then the other lever will engage the drum, which will allow it to go forward and backwards. Because this thing sat out in the middle of the woods for probably 40 years before I managed to get it. This is rusted pretty well. It's got a lot of pits and stuff in it. However, the part that's underneath where the part takeoff attaches is perfectly shaped. There's nothing wrong with it at all, and it's attached with 2 set screws into a keyed shaft right there, and that's 1 3/8. This was a cheap aluminum rule that I put on there, and of course the ink wore the numbers off in no time at all, you know, sitting out in the weather. But here's an indicator that I put on there, and once you get this set in, you can adjust the rule to read how you want it to read, so that it's easy for you to determine how much you're taking off with each pull of your set works. I think I've got a set for if I remember right, I got a set for either 1 1/16 or 1 1/8 every time you pull one full stroke of the set works, but that's very easily adjustable. The knees are in actually really pretty good shape. They're not all worn off and rounded, so these gears right here engage in those very, very well. This thing is driven right here with a double V belt. That's a brand new belt. I found it at Bates Belt in St. Louis, but it's a V. It's actually shaped like a diamond, because it needs to have traction on one pulley one direction when you're going forward, and when you reverse it, it actually uses the back side of the pulley or the back side of the belt in order to engage the opposite direction. So it has to be a double V belt. Now, one of these pulleys, I don't remember which one it is, has got some rust pittings. It's not served me any issue at all whatsoever, but it's something that you might want to keep an eye on. I keep everything greased and oiled whenever I use it consistently, but like I say, it's been setting for a while, so I just hit it with a little WD-40 to loosen everything up for right now. It's not a bad mill, it just needs a little more tweaking. You know, I got most of it done, but it just still needs a little more tweaking to make a really productive little mill. It's really been good to me. It's not broken down or anything since I got it up and back together and running. For the video, and not for sawing purposes necessarily, but for the video, I've decided to put that B7100 Kubota on there. It's only a little 16 horse 3-cylinder diesel, but at least we'll be able to do run the mill through and let you guys see that it does, in fact, do what it's supposed to do. The other reason I've done it or use this is because of the level of the part takeoff is pretty much in line with the PTO input or main arbor on the Belsaw mill. If you have the much larger tractor, this sets up way high. That's just why when I put the 88 on it, I have big holes that I actually dug for the rear wheels of the 88 to drop it down so that this part takeoff shaft is really close to level. But for all intents and purposes, today the demonstration for the purpose of making this video to sell the sawmill is just that little old tractor there. Because it's been so long since I've had it running, I'm going to make a quick pass from one end to the other with the carriage before we ever set the blade into the log. Here's the miscellaneous parts and pieces that I have. These are extra wheels that run on the flat side of the bed frame. This is a pair of them that actually runs. Those are the guide wheels that sit on the angle iron on the other side of the. These are the actual ones that keep it in line. So there's a pair of those. Here's also a pair of brand new ones. They're a little bit different in size from this here, but I'm sure that's workable. I don't know why they're of a different size. Other parts and pieces. This is an example of your flange that actually attaches down to the pedestal, and then this is supposed to be threaded, but the threads are rusted away. Here's an extra head block off of the second carriage that's going to go with it. It's a partial carriage because I took the knee off, remember, to add the third head block on there. And then here's the actual dog, and it too is broken right here and it's missing a tooth, but that was on the extra carriage. Here's the original. If you see, take a look how thin, 3/4 inch by a quarter, and they just are weak as could be. And this is how it fits on the head block. I'm sure you guys know, but it'll either go through this back slot on the head block or up really close to the front slot on the head block to get your dog really close to the saw blade really close to the dog. But if you look closely, when I got this one was broken in two, and you can see the brazed repair right there on that. And I also put some shims and stuff in here to thicken this up so that the part that works this up and down would bite into it better. Here's the other one that was broken before I got it. Someone welded this on with a stainless steel rod. And if you look closely, you can see that This one here was also broken into, and I brazed and cleaned that all up and made that repair. And you can see here we're still missing a tooth on this one here. But these are all the original Belsaw pieces that'll go with it. This is another drive gear that actually goes across the bed frame on the, when you work your set works, this will pull it forward and backwards on the knee to move the log forward or backwards, or the head blocks forward or backwards. So there it is, guys, a reasonably well functioning Belsaw model A14, needing a little tender loving care and some work on that blade. The blade is what needs the service. It needs to be hammered. It needs to have the bits and shanks replaced, and I think it's going to be good to go. Nothing but minor adjustments necessary, and I do have a whole bucket full of original parts and pieces that actually came off of the mill to go with it. And I also have parts of another carriage assembly that goes with it as well. I think I may have an extension, just a short extension for the actual carriage assembly that'll allow you to put even a longer log on, longer than what this 6-foot carriage is. But like I said, it's not in perfect condition, but it is workable as soon as you get your blade taken care of and some minor tweaking and adjustments. So I'm just a little bit south of St. Louis, right off of the interstate, not too far. You have to have a big trailer, or at least a good axle and a way to attach it in order to pull it out of here, preferably with your blinkers and tail light extensions all the way to the back end of it, and you should be good to go. I will let this go for $1,750 to the first guy that is really interested. Tractor is not included, just the part takeoff shaft all the way back, nor is my cant hook. If anyone's interested, leave me a message, in the comment section. Figure out a way to get a hold of you, or I'll have it on probably Facebook Marketplace too, and you can leave me a private message on Facebook Marketplace.